Look, we all know the drill with early access titles. They usually launch broken, buggy, and barely playable, but honestly, this long awaited survival crafting sequel straight up defies that tired stereotype from the very first drop into the water. It is remarkably polished right out of the gate. It actually feels more finished right now than a lot of full price games currently hitting shelves. But the real elephant in the room, or should I say, the terrifying Leviathan in the room, is the brand new multiplayer mode. Does bringing a friend along for the dive completely shatter that soul crushing isolation that made the first game an absolute masterpiece? Let's talk about it because it is a huge shift. Here's the thing about returning to the ocean. The development team over at Unknown Worlds clearly knew exactly what we wanted. If you played the standalone expansion, Below Zero, you might remember it spent a lot of time testing out land-based exploration and tweaking its story during early access. Well, they thankfully ditched that terrestrial detour to deliver a proper, pure underwater survival crafting sequel. And unlike the completely solo voyages of the past, this time you can finally squad up in cooperative multiplayer. Right now, the game is fresh into early access, meaning things like the final price tag, exact console platforms, and a concrete 1.0 release date are basically mysteries buried deep in the sand. So let's dive into how it actually plays. The core gameplay loop that addicted us years ago is totally intact and just as compelling. You are still out there furiously managing your rapidly depleting oxygen, nervously scouring the seabed for new blueprints, and hoarding raw materials to craft your way up the food chain. But they have purposefully layered in some serious depth this time around to keep things fresh. You have got this entirely new biomod system, giving your diver a variety of passive buffs and active character upgrades. Plus, you will discover weird infected alien plants called angel combs that you can heal to unlock permanent progression adaptations. It completely changes how you build out your character. You are not totally defenseless against the aggressive local wildlife either. I spent a good chunk of my run using new non-lethal deterrents like the sonic resonator and blinding flares to gently shoo away hungry predators. Getting around is also way snappier thanks to the new Wakemaker tool that dramatically increases your underwater movement speed. And when it comes to powering your high-tech underwater homes, new hydroelectric turbines completely revolutionize your energy collection. Let me just gush for a second. This game is visually jaw-dropping. Upgrading the franchise to Unreal Engine 5 was undeniably the best move the developers could have made. Remember the terrible immersion-breaking pop-in and stuttering messes from the original game? Gone? This sequel runs buttery smooth, providing highly polished, stable performance, and the way the dynamic ocean lighting plays off the underwater flora is absolutely hypnotic. Then there's the significantly improved base building system. It is infinitely better than before. Snapping individual rooms together, expanding your layout with easier room extensions and tweaking module shapes feels completely intuitive now. I spent hours constructing this massive sprawling habitat featuring giant glass walls just so I could sip my virtual coffee and watch the alien fish casually swim by. The signature tension of the series is also beautifully intact. During my playthrough, I pushed a cave dive way too far, trying to scan one last fragment. My screen started fading to black, my lungs were screaming for air, and right as I accepted my watery grave, I miraculously stumbled into a life-saving, oxygen-producing plant. It was pure adrenaline. Tying it all together is a deep, narrative-driven exploration of abandoned colony sites scattered across the seafloor, But look, it is definitely not all smooth sailing. Because we are playing an early access build, you are inevitably going to slam headfirst into a massive brick wall of missing content. You eventually hit a point where the progression simply stops dead, and the intriguing story literally cuts off mid-sentence. On top of that frustrating wall, finding specific blueprints in certain biomes currently turns into an absolute chore. The scanning grind feels way too punishing in specific zones. Plus, if you genuinely want to survive the deep sea trenches, you are practically forced into a tedious cycle of building multiple bases everywhere just to establish necessary safe zones. Also, the monster spawning logic needs some serious developer love. I was casually paddling around near the surface when a massive leviathan spawned directly in my face. That absolutely should not happen. Plenty of players agree they are lurking way too high up in the water column right now, completely breaking traditional spawning expectations and ruining that gradual descent into terror. So, where does that actually leave your wallet? While the early access price is currently locked in at $30, you really need to ask yourself if you are willing to buy a ticket for a ride that probably won't be fully finished for another 2 or 3 years. Early access requires a lot of patience. Honestly, the biggest rival this new game faces is its own legacy. The original Subnautica is still widely cited as one of the best survival crafting games ever made. You have to decide if you want to wade through a gorgeous but unfinished sandbox right now or just stick to fully baked survival games until this sequel officially crosses the finish line. Looking at the community forums, players are definitely impressed by the day one technical polish, but there is a massive cloud of skepticism hanging over the end user license agreement. Combined with past corporate drama involving the parent company, Krafton, a lot of folks are refusing to buy in on principle alone. Some users argue the EULA is standard, but the unease is real. The highly anticipated addition of multiplayer is also tearing the community apart. I personally loved diving with a buddy as it makes survival enjoyable. But purists argue that having a friend crack jokes completely strips away that core sense of creeping dread and isolation. Oh, and multiplayer saves are strictly tethered to the host, meaning if your friend logs off, your shared world goes down with them. Furthermore, the overall performance is still highly debated. While my personal rig handled it flawlessly, a bunch of players on mid-range hardware setups are struggling hard to maintain a consistent 60 frames per second. At the end of the day, Subnautica 2 is a visually stunning, deeply addictive plunge back into the unknown. The co-op mode works wonderfully, and the developers even threw in an awesome base refund tool so you do not lose your materials if a map update accidentally destroys your carefully planned habitat. But if you absolutely despise hitting invisible progression walls, hate experiencing incomplete stories, or feel uncomfortable about corporate EULAs, you might want to keep your flippers dry and wait until the official 1.0 launch. And before we officially wrap things up, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Therion.dev. They make awesome, high quality gaming apparel that honestly feels as essential as an upgraded oxygen tank. Their gear is ridiculously comfortable and perfect for those marathon sessions of deep sea exploration and base building. If you enjoyed this review, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Have fun out there, and I'll see you in the next one.